If you want to know what expulsion means and how it feels, it's like this. And remember, I'm always going to use examples that hopefully you can find easy to grasp. Perhaps some of you came to class inspired, excited. Maybe some of you were excited, and that inspiration continued until about 6:30. Then you found me boring. You found the story irrelevant. And little by little, the inspiration left you. And now all you do is look at the clock and you say to yourself, why is it that the clock is moving so slowly? You have been expelled. And what happens now? Boredom, slowly frustration, anxiousness, confusion. Should I drop the class? Should I keep the class? How can I entertain myself for the next hour and a half? Okay. Since Enkidu is no longer himself and can't find his old self, he looks at the woman and says, what am I to do now? I can no longer go back to being the man that I once was. And the woman looks at him and says, come with me. I'll guide you to my town, Uruk. I'll get you to meet my king, Gilgamesh. He looks like you. He's handsome like you, powerful like you. Meet him. Okay. But both Shamat and the people that Enkidu passes by tell him something interesting about Gilgamesh, that Gilgamesh is cruel, Gilgamesh is corrupt. And all of a sudden, Enkidu only has one agenda. I want to meet Gilgamesh, and I want to teach him what it means to be human. It matters very little if you have read the Bible. It matters very little if you have read philosophy books. It matters very little if you think and sometimes feel. City life ultimately corrupts and contaminates all of them. You need someone from the forest, from the nature, that has not been touched or contaminated by city life to enter into your life. And that is Enkidu. The name means the most innocent of mankind. Eventually, there comes a time where Enkidu has reached the city, and for the first time, he meets Gilgamesh. Someone who has God inside him but has forgotten. Someone who is innocent, who has God inside him but has not forgotten. What do two alpha males do? They wrestle. So here is how things work. Symbolically, you are Gilgamesh. You are restless. Nothing can give you calm. Nothing can give you peace. You're always looking, praying for someone to come into your life and remind you, teach you what it means to be human and how to best live your life, a life that is meaningful. The gods above listen, and they create a human being, and this human being walks into your life. This is you, restless, and you're curious. You're looking for answers. This is Enkidu, potentially your teacher. Now, one of the things you need to know about Gilgamesh is the following. Go back to our conversation on Wednesday. Gilgamesh has physical desires. He is a physical man. He is guided by 5 senses. The function of the 5 senses is to go out there like an animal and see and feel what brings about pleasure. Then hunt. Chase whatever it is that brings about pleasure. And then devours it. Okay? So there is a good part of Gilgamesh that has a history of physical pleasures. Anna Christina, is it? She asked about attachment the other night. And the truth is, you can't talk about detachment without understanding how attachments come about. But we'll save that for a different date. Anything that comes into your senses and anything that you pursue will have no choice but to create a certain amount of emotions inside you. Some negative, some positive. Negative, you repel. Positive, you want more. There is a good amount of Gilgamesh that also lives in the intellectual world, but the intellect has only one function. Where do I place my physical body to get the pleasures that I most enjoy? And for Gilgamesh, it's mostly physical pleasures. This is what we call iron. Okay? Now, we are not as corrupt or contaminated as Gilgamesh. So there is a part to all of us in this class. Since you're sitting in this classroom and you want to pass the class and get some units and hopefully transfer to a 4-year school, there is a bronze part inside you. You want power, you want money, you want degrees, you want to buy a house and a car. There is also this other part to us that is silver. You want companionship, you want love, you want friends. This is our physical life. This is the 1/3 human. The task of Enkidu, is to bring out of Gilgamesh the 2/3 God. But what you have is a man who is saturated in physical life. For those of you in this class who may have difficulty grasping this, imagine you have some sort of an issue inside you, what we call psychological, what we call trauma. It has roots inside you. Maybe you had a companion who hurt you, betrayed you. Maybe you had a father who hurt you and betrayed you. And it happened during the formative years, 0 to 7. It's nearly impossible to uproot that particular narrative. Okay? The task of Enkidu is enormous. He needs to get rid of all of this. And like the woman in the story of 1001 Nights, create a space inside Gilgamesh where the 2/3 divinity can come to the surface. So Gilgamesh can come to see himself, not so much as a physical human being, but as a divine human being. Okay? For those of us in this class, again, who have been in long-term relationships, sometimes you long to write or to receive beautiful poetry from your companion. To feel an ounce of passion or love. You just want to be removed from the politics of life and the politics of relationships. Okay? Now, so if you recall, Enkidu wants to give Gilgamesh gold. It's something that transcends the senses. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, but you feel something. Okay? When Gilgamesh sees Enkidu, the first thing that happens is he becomes attracted. That's the first component you need for any desire to appear. Without attraction, there is no desire. You will not desire to want it, to pursue it. None of you in this class will ever be attracted to someone who is unattractive. Physically. There is a magnet inside us that will always be pulled towards anything that this magnet finds attractive. It's organic. Okay? So just in case one or two or all of you find yourself at a gathering of sorts, and there's a guy or a gal over there, and physically they're just mesmerizing, very attractive, don't punish yourself for slowly gravitating towards a person. Your body is wise. It knows what attractive is. You simply walk towards the person. What you find is a different story. Okay? Now, once there is attraction, you have this thing called desire. Now remember, the way this happens between Enkidu and Gilgamesh is that they begin to wrestle. Wrestling is tough. Malcolm X is in prison. Reginald. Malcolm X has his own way of looking at what it means to be black, what it means to live in America. Reginald has a different perspective. They keep talking. It's a wrestling match. Reginald wants to convince Malcolm that Malcolm is wrong. So remember, for those of you in this class who are expecting or wanting to be around someone who is really wise, if you want to be inspired, if you want to kind of transform yourselves, it begins with a wrestling match, and you won't like it. Reflection always goes against life. Always. Your body says, I want to be with Brad Pitt. The deeper part of you says, does he have substance? And now you got to go and ask difficult questions. Human beings are not designed to ask difficult questions. We are made to live our lives superficially and then die. We are not wired to be just. We have to fight to create it. We are not wired to be gravitating towards people who are unattractive. It's only through philosophy. The kingdom of God lives inside everyone. The good, the bad, the ugly. We are designed to be greedy, to be lustful. Overcoming it is to overcome the forces of life. Okay? Gilgamesh has a history. He's attached to that history. That history gives him identity, gives him emotions, gives him purpose, meaning. Enkidu walks in to demolish all of that. Once there is this desire, you begin to be somewhat curious. Now remember, these are all seeds that need to be nourished and then protected. And the seed of inspiration is like any other seed. Go to Home Depot, buy a packet of seed, and just put them in the ground. Well, damn, if you don't give it water, if you don't give it air, if you don't give it light, it's going to die and wither away. Just in case you read a book and the seed of inspiration enters you, well, if you don't protect it, nourish it, it will wither. So inspiration means nothing. The more they wrestle, the more they interact, the more time they spend, the more Enkidu will grow on Gilgamesh. And the more Enkidu grows on Gilgamesh, the more dependent Gilgamesh will be on Enkidu. Codependency. Enkidu has to some extent, teach Gilgamesh that his ways are wrong. And human beings, because one of our first deadly sins is called pride, none of us in this class desire to be told that we are wrong. We don't even want to confess that to ourselves. The seed of curiosity is protected, it turns into interest. The seed of interest is protected, it turns into infatuation. The seed of infatuation is protected, it turns into obsession. The seed of obsession is protected and nourished, it turns into love. Love makes you passive. And when you're passive, you receive. And in receiving, you give your ears. You give your mind, you give your emotions. You allow the other person to break you and remake you. Do you have any questions before I go home? Shan.
Trying to form this right. Because I learned about animism. Is there some sort of aspect of animism with the origins of Enkidu and nature?
The idea that there is a certain spark of something inside everything.
That God is in everything, sort of idea that originally the people before, like they're really, say, myths and paganism or different beliefs, it was more of an animist belief that everything was in nature itself and the animals and sacred.
Yeah, there was a sociologist by the name of Auguste Comte. He has this idea that human beings first saw God in nature. Then they saw God in the sky. Then they saw God beyond the skies. Then they saw God within themselves. Then came the stage where it was just science. Now, not so much through the Bible, but through the telescope, you could figure out how the cosmos works. So, in some sense, you could say, yes, the ancient people believed that there is this Persian poet by the name of Baba Tahir around the 12th century. به دریا بنگرم دریا توینم به صحرا بنگرم صحرا توینم به هر جا بنگرم کوه و در و دشت نشون قامت رعنا توینم. That به صحرا بنگرم صحرا توینم. I look into the valleys and I see your presence. به دریا بنگرم دریا توینم. But I look into the ocean I see your presence. به هر جا بنگرم کوه و در و دشت. It doesn't matter where I look. Everywhere I look, I see your presence. Now, without making it too complicated, when you're obsessed, one of the things that happens is that, and it happens gradually, it's like thief at night. You know, you spend time with someone, and without you really being aware of it, they begin to occupy more and more space inside you. And then one morning, you wake up like at 3 a.m. and you say, and the first thing that comes to mind, for example, is like Joe. Joe? I woke up for Joe? Why am I awake? And then you want to put yourself back to sleep, but Joe's image doesn't disappear. And the more you fight to get rid of the image, the stronger it becomes. And then just wake up at 3. And then you say, should I text him? Should I call him? Should I go to his house? And so you just keep walking around your room, and then sun comes up and you just drive to his place and you say, let's go for coffee. And you don't really know what has come over you. You guys grab some coffee. You don't tell him how, what has happened to you. And you have a test, say in math, but you can't focus. You want Joe to be next to you. And then you realize that after your math class, you have to go to work, but you have lost all focus. You have lost all sense of yourself. It's as if yourself, Michelle, with all the ambitions, all the desires, all the identities, meanings that you've had that governed you, they're no longer there to protect you. They're no longer there to govern you. It's like as if you have entered into this chaotic world of the unknown. For some strange reason, I need to be around Joe and I need to be around him all the time. Why? I mean, it's a curious thing, And so that's where you get obsession. The thing you need to understand about the ancient people is we can never again go back and kind of live that particular lifestyle. There is a guy whose name is Rollo May. He was a very devoted student of Sigmund Freud. He wrote a book some time ago, and some of you may be interested in the book. It's a really, really good book. It's called, I think, A Cry for Myth. Myths are a set of stories that make life a bit more magical. It's like all the stories I shared with you about what it means to be a woman, at least what it used to be, for the ancient people, that there was something profoundly sacred about being a woman, that women are not cheap, they can't give themselves too cheaply, And for the longest time, men really couldn't look into the woman's eyes. It would be a sign of disrespect. You always lower your head, And so what he argues is that when the myth of a culture goes away, and it's something I think we talked about on Tuesday maybe, about capitalism. Capitalism has a tendency of cheapening everything. All the stories that used to kind of inspire the human being, they no longer do. They kind of ground it even far more. There is a new song that came out, and I think Nicki Minaj is in it. I think it has parts of it. My wife told me this. I haven't really listened to it. I haven't seen the video or anything. It's filled with profanities, that now we have entered an age where the culture embraces music that are profane, that are vulgar. In fact, people like Nicki Minaj and Miley Cyrus and Snoop Dogg are the embodiments of heroic iconoclasm, that they are icons. You want to be like them. They are the most valuable pieces of the culture. And once you enter this particular age, then the truth is there are no myths to glue people together, to inspire them. Let me give you an example of, it's a really, really nice story. It's a story that lived inside ancient Greece for a long, long, long time. And some of you may have heard the story. It's called Pegasus. It's no different than the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's no different than the life of a salmon fish. Pegasus is about a horse. The horse has wings, but because the horse has been walking all of his life, he has completely forgotten that he has wings. I mean, if you can fly, why walk? You know? And the horse walks. Now, the problem with walking underground and going from city to city is that when you walk, your life is small. Your issues are small. It may be big for you, but they're really, really small. You know, your ambitions are small. Your desires are small and pathetic. And then what happens is, well, how do you tell someone that they have wings to their sides? Well, you can't sit and have a conversation with them. Then comes Socrates. Socrates is like this gadfly. It's a tiny little fly, but has huge fangs. Socrates sits on this horse and bites. I mean, the fangs go way deep inside the meat of this horse. And every time Socrates bites, the horse goes, ouch. And with every pain, the horse jumps. And with every jump, the air goes between the body of the horse and the wings. And all of a sudden, the wings pop out. Okay? And the horse looks and says, what the hell are these? They are wings. Now, they become a thing of curiosity. How come I had never seen the wings before? How come I had never felt the wings before? Well, because you didn't have the right pain. Your boyfriend gives you pain, you think about your relationship. You fail a class, you think about graduation. The sort of pain that Socrates gives you access to bigger questions. Epics, an epic of pains, one of longing and yearning for meanings that no one can take away from you. You know the saying in one of the Gospels? You shouldn't store your treasures down here. And what is it that your treasure? I mean, what is your treasure? Okay, so my treasure is investing who am I, what I am inside my kids. Your kids go into school. They're exposed to the advertisement by the city life, by capitalism, by YouTube, by cell phones. I no longer have any power over my kids. Why the hell would I want to invest 110% of my time, energy into my kids? I'll give them a little bit, but eventually I know that life will steal them from me. Boyfriend, girlfriend, if you are seasoned in relationships, you know that eventually, regardless of what your relationship status is, you will always be alone. Always. That's not to say it's not a bad thing once in a while to sit on the sofa and watch a good movie with your companion, but you will be alone. You will have to figure out your own questions and the answers to them. Now, the funny thing about the horse is that most horses, when they suffer a bite, they go to CVS and look for a medicine. They read the Bible. They go therapy. They smoke. They drink. They porn. This particular horse, Pegasus, says, you know, it's painful, the bite, but man, the way these wings, when they flap open, when they make me feel, I really, really like it. And so looks at Socrates and says, can you bite me a little bit more? Socrates says, yeah, of course I'll bite you. That's my job. My job as a philosopher is to bite. And when I bite, some people will drop the class. Some people will complain. Some people will raise their hand and flip you off. But some people will say, give me more. And that's Plato. Okay. And so Socrates says, are you sure? And that's the other thing. You can never do anything without asking the student's permission. You sure you want me to bite? And Pegasus says, yes. And so Socrates begins to bite. The fangs go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the pain goes more intense. Now, as you go higher, for those of you in this class who've ever been on a plane, right? And the pilot says, we're taking off. And as you go higher, you look down and you realize the houses that you looked to be so huge when you were walking now look so tiny. And you say, really? All these people live there? How small and insignificant, how pathetic. And that's another difficulty that you will have as a potential student. Your life will begin to look very, very small. Your pursuits very, very small. Your pains very, very small. And it's a difficult thing to adjust to because you walked into a class for a grade. And now you say, really? Am I really that pathetic to spend all this time for a stupid letter grade? Am I that vain? And the answer is yes. And now comes the beginning of your conflict. Fear of the grade or to be inspired. Now, as I said, most Pegasus will eventually go back and say, I rather walk. Because when you walk, you see the signs. You see the traffic lights. People will tell you where to go, what to do, when to eat, when to sleep, what to do, who you are, what you are. But when you're high up there, there is wind. Your GPS no longer works. Your GPS belongs to the world of walking. When you're flying, you have no idea where you're going to go. And Socrates is not the sort of a fellow who's going to give you a destination. He says, my job is only to create enough pain so there is enough wind under your wings, and you will hopefully enjoy the wind under your wings and enjoy the pain, because without the pain, you can't fly. Now, what will happen is if you have the capacity, that's the other thing. Some people simply don't have the capacity, but if you have the capacity to fly, there is only one place you want to go. You look up. The most attractive thing in your universe is the sun. Down here is cold. Down here is lonely. Down here is anxiety, frustration, dread, confusion. Up there, you have the warmth of the sun. You will see. And what you see does not belong here. You see too much. And then you want to fly closer and closer to the sun. But something happens to you when you get close to the sun. You're no longer Pegasus. You're no longer a horse. You are now Icarus, a human being made of wax. Whatever crap is inside you because of just human existence, they've all disappeared. You become sensitive, like Enkidu. Any animal trapped, you will free. You have to carry the burden of empathy, compassion. You see too much, you know too much. And you're receptive to all the disasters of life. And you get to very, very close to the sun. And you want to melt into the sun. And the sun looks at you and says, I don't think so. The sun melts you. And you drop back. Where do you go? You drop back to Oakland. Now, you have been Pegasus without the wings, Pegasus with wings, Icarus, melted Icarus. You have access to the world, the human world, the world of confusion while you're flying. You have access to the world of pain, and in pain, you're always going to be alone. And no pain is more delicious than the pain created for you by Socrates, i.e., your teacher. And then your ultimate freedom is understanding. But it's not an understanding that gives you a comfortable life. Remember, whenever you know too much, it liberates you from ignorance, but it enslaves you to what we call the human condition, i.e. suffering, disappointment. We'll do 5 more minutes and then we'll go home. one day, now let me say a couple of other things about once you get to this place called love. Love has a variety of different stages. I'm not going to go through all of them, but three main ones. Gilgamesh wants to be around Enkidu all the time. So the first part of love is purely physical. Now remember, Enkidu has innocence inside him, and Gilgamesh feels that. Enkidu has transcendental beauty inside him, and Gilgamesh feels that. So Gilgamesh has fallen in love with someone who has things inside him that are non-physical. And that's another part of this tragic deal that you have to understand. Imagine one of you, for example, going to India or some forsaken place on this planet. You went there to have a good time and you run into this weirdo, whoever this weirdo may be. You have your own set of desires and goals and ambitions. You just go there to sightsee. And you run into this man and you feel a little strange. You're like 20, he's like 70. And as you begin to kind of approach him and ask some questions, little by little you realize, you feel as if you want to hang out with this person. You don't know why. I mean, you say, he's old enough to be my great-great-great-great-grandfather. You know? He doesn't talk about booze. He doesn't talk about dancing. He talks about all this heavy stuff of life. I'm just here to have a good time, man. And you don't understand why. You have this feeling of wanting to be around this person. And as you spend more time with this person, you realize as you fly, as he forces you to think a bit deeper about things, you realize your own life, your own ambitions are meaningless. You no longer want to pursue them, but you want to pursue what this person is offering you. But the first stage is Gilgamesh always wanted to be physically in the presence of Enkidu. That's the first stage of love. And for those of you in this class who have ever been in love, you know those intense few weeks, you always want to be around this person. When they're not there, you long, you yearn, you become religious by nature, you worship. Why? Because you have been touched, stung by this thing called love. It beautifies your life. Inspires you, gives you wings. Now, the tragic part of you and I falling in love with people is that we fall in love with their physical body, or we just spend time with them and eventually they grow on us like cancer. Okay? But you realize that they really, intellectually, they're kind of dim-witted. They're stupid. Emotionally, they just feel about the cheap stuff of life. And so this love that we have for them slowly gets diminished, corrupted and contaminated. عشقایی که از پی رنگی بود عشق نبود عاقبت ننگی بود. We fall in love with colors. What happens to colors? Well, eventually they become dim. I used to wash cars and I used to detail cars for almost 22 years. When we had customers who used to bring us cars and say, can you detail this car? And what you have is a car, a paint job that's been oxidized. And what you do is you use this high-speed buffer and you bring the shine out. You bring the color out. And then you put this with a low-speed buffer. You put this glaze on it. And this car is like mirror, do you see? But wait for about 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. The sun, the rain, the weather, the oxidization eventually will come out again, and all your work will go to waste. But the shine was there, and it was there good for about 2 weeks. Okay? Now, what Enkidu has are a set of ideas. Philo. It's a kind of friendship. But it's not friendship of the body, but rather friendship of the mind. Now, why would you want to be friends with someone who is an intellectual? Not intellectual in an academic sense, but you have feelings, but they are able to put the feelings into language. You see your own self in somebody else's words. Now, just because you hear something, it doesn't mean you understand. It just means you hear, you see, you're inspired. But a good teacher will always tell you, you need to be around me all the time. You need to become addicted to my body, to my physical space. My physical space needs to become your home. Your eyes will only find rest when they gaze upon me and no other. Inspiration can only come through me and no other. Okay? Now, because remember, prostitution doesn't mean that you sleep with your body with people. One day you read the Buddha, one day you read Jesus, one day you read Moses, and all these people have different ideas. Moses is a social reformer. Jesus is a spiritual reformer. Muhammad is a social and a spiritual reformer. Buddha doesn't give a shit about God. And when you eat all these foods, all you will have at the end of the day is indigestion. Good teachers will demand monogamy. It's you and them. That's it. You get used to their body, their physical presence. It's only their ideas you care for. It's only their perspective you care for. No one else's is interesting. Now, if you have a really good teacher, after you've been trained, now this usually takes about 5 years. You constantly see him. You constantly talk to him. Now, this is going to be painful because good teachers are always against life. Why are you going to school? I'm doing business. Business? Are you stupid? Well, my parents didn't go to school. I don't have any money. Fine. Do business. But you got to do double major. Do philosophy. One serves the pocket, the other serves your soul. You need to have both, lion and the lamb. Now, after about anywhere from 5 to 10 years of this area, any good teacher will tell you, the kingdom of God lives inside you. I have given you what I could. I gave you enough of my body, my physical space. You came to my house, I gave you food. You asked questions, I provided answers. I can no longer give you anything. I don't have anything to give. Your quest now must be taken alone, by yourself. But up to this point, what you have is codependency. And that is what Gilgamesh and Enkidu, that's their story. Enkidu forces, manipulates, exploits Gilgamesh into falling in love with him. And when you love, the only person that exists for you is the person with whom you're in love. No other. Now go back to Enkidu. He is innocent. He is pure. He is wise. He is naked. He hasn't forgotten what it means to have been created by the gods. Gilgamesh has forgotten. Enkidu is there to remind him. What has forced Gilgamesh into forgetfulness? Life. Life is the disease. Enkidu is the remedy. When we come back tomorrow, we'll finish up the story. Have a good evening. Stay safe. As you leave, make sure you leave together. It's dark. It could be dangerous, potentially. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.